Hey everyone. So in this video, I'm going to share 3 tips with you guys that I think are very useful to be aware of when you're drawing hair with pen and ink. Actually, drawing hair can be pretty tricky, and because it's not the same as when you're drawing with pencil. You know, when you have pencil or like charcoal or another medium like that, you actually can create even tone. You know, but with pen and ink, it's not so easy. So I think you have to be a little bit more mindful of the use of lines and how you render it, because if not, it can eventually sometimes look a little bit over rendered, and that's something you don't necessarily want in your work. So it's good to be aware of that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sketch in maybe a ponytail, because the thing is, it doesn't really matter if the type of texture here and so on. The fundamental principles are pretty much the same. All right, so on this side, I actually have, say, like an Afro puff, right? And this one will be more like tightly curled here, and over here we have like long, wavy hair. So you actually get an idea of how to deal with different texture hair, but overall, the principle is pretty much the same. Now, the first one I'm going to discuss is structure. Now, with structure, the idea is you want to be able to draw hair and still make it feel as if it has volume. So in other words, even though I'm looking at this, for example, I'm not just going to be thinking of it in terms of just strands of hair or just lines. I have to in some way think of it as having volume or mass. See, so in other words, I have to think about it as not just being lines, but I have to also think of it in terms of having volume. So for example, let's say I'm just looking at this. It's good to think of it in terms of, you can think of it as a round mass in this way. You see, just by using these contour lines, I kind of accentuate a sense that it's curving over. Now here we have, like, she has a little bang here, right? So in the same way, now you don't necessarily have a form like this. What you may have instead is a form that may be like, think of it like a cylinder, like this. You see? So now this is at the top of the head, and as it curves over the forehead, it's like this. All right, so what you're gonna have then is you're gonna have if, say, for example, the light source is here, you may find that this part may be where the light or the lightest area is. So here will be a little middle value, and here will be darker going up. Now what I'm doing here is accentuating, one, the structure, right? And then two, that sets the precedent for how the light and shadow will form. And then afterwards, then you go into your rendering. Now on this side, now what I did here was kind of like make some little divisions, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually show you how a simple way you can do a braid. So say, for example, let's say the hair is braided like this. So what you have here is something that looks like this. So even then, I'm still thinking of it in a three-dimensional way, because I'm thinking of them almost like, think of like rounded forms like that. What do you think of it as, like a banana or whatever it is? But think of it as having depth, because it actually rays from the head. Now, in terms of creating the pattern, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is imagine something like this, whether a zigzag or something like this, and it gets smaller as it goes to the edges, right? And then all you have to do is just, and you just repeat that. So you'll find that as you do this, you'll just naturally create the braid. See, you do the same thing over and over. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do in each of these. All right, so it's pretty simple. And this goes even if you're doing like a ponytail, same principle. Kind of like feel the overall shape. And that's pretty much it. Now, in the same way, I'm thinking of this as a round spherical form like this. All right. This is how I'm thinking about it. It's not just a circle. See, it's useful to think of it in a flat way. You know, you have to also, that's useful as well. In the initial stages, it's useful to just think of it as a flat shape. But now, when you're going to think about actually rendering it, it's best to think of it as a three-dimensional form. So after establishing this volume, right, now you can actually start deciding on how you want to do the contour. And what I'm doing with the contour now, I'm just using marks like these. And I'm trying to make it spiral or taper towards the top. So where it's closer to the edge, it's wider and it tapers out like so. Let's discuss the use of line. Okay, there's some basic things you should be able to do. For example, you know, with following the structure and the flow of the hair, right? You should be able to make lines like this. So for example, you should be able to practice doing this. Now let's say the light source is up here. So that means if it's like this, wherever, if the light source is at the top, like this, wherever it's facing up will be light, wherever it's facing down will be in shadow. Wherever it's facing up will be in light, wherever facing down will be in shadow. That's a basic principle of light and shadow. What's facing to the light source will be in light, what's facing away will be in shadow. Simple. Now with curved forms, it's still the same. However, there is no shape, no sharp edge right here. Okay, what happens now is that there is shadow, but it transitions gradually into light. So what I would generally do is I kind of use like lines that seem to taper out, and I just flick the pen in that way. Now as it goes around back into the area of light, it also flickers in that direction. So you see what I'm doing? Here. Now another thing is you have to be able to show or indicate where the light source is. So let's say, for example, let's say we have a shape like this, which is very common with hair, right? And this is the line of balance. You see this line a lot in nature. You see it everywhere in science, the sine wave, whatever. I in my book actually dedicated a chapter to just discussing ways of using this line. So let's say we have a shape like this, right? Now let's say the light source is at the top. Now what will you do? Well, if down here will naturally be in shadow. So what are you going to do is you're going to actually bring, and notice that I'm making my curves follow the form, and see, and they taper towards the top. So I'm leaving here the white of the paper to indicate that this is the lightest area. So this is conveying light and shadow. See, it's gradually going up. Now, initially, afterwards I can go in and strengthen some lines and so on and so forth. Another thing is too, is you should be able to make your lines appear to spiral and also follow the form as a spiral. This is something I do a lot in my drawings. So in other words, this enables you to follow the form. Your lines are not necessarily robotic or unidirectional. They're not just going in one direction. They kind of flow. So in other words, what I'm doing here is I'm actually doing this, but with the lines flowing next to each other. It's really good practice because it enables you to really capture the flow of hair without doing it in a mechanical way. So we're going to do this one and then we're going to do this one. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this, learned something, or even found something inspiring that you can apply to your own work. As I said, you know, with drawing hair with pen and ink, it's a matter of thinking about the structure of the hair and thinking about the light and shadow or value pattern that will be created based on that structure, and then deciding on how you will decide to actually render that to reflect it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.